Turn on your mic, Bob. Good afternoon, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on Tuesday, May 2nd. I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Board of Supervisors of St. Croix County. We're fortunate to have with us, I believe, Reverend Dawn Jeffers Ramstead from the United Methodist Church. Hopefully she is here. Okay, well, I think what we will do, if in her absence, is please stand for a moment of silence and followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. As for our roll call, since we're missing some of our technology tonight, it appears that all of our supervisors are present and accountable, including Supervisor Leaf and Burning, who are joining us virtually on Zoom. Okay, now public comment. We're going to start out with Sean Casella from CASA. Sean?
Thank you very much. I always love coming and talking to you, and today is really a good day because I get to tell you about how things have been going for CASA. So a year ago, we had 2 advocates and we were supporting 3 children in St. Croix County. I came on June 20th, so I haven't quite been here a year. It took me about 3 months to go through the training and really get my feet under myself. And since then, so since October, we've swelled to 18 volunteers. We have 5 waiting in the wings to be trained and then to be sworn in, and we are serving 30 children right now in need. As you saw outside with the blue pinwheels, we had 176 children who were in out-of-home placement last year in St. Croix County. So there is a need for kids who need support because their family is just not quite functioning right. So I do have some statistics I'll just pepper you with because I know you all love statistics. So right now we're providing approximately 240 hours a month of support to those 30 children. And that comes in the form of meeting with the children, meeting with their support teams, that would be the schools, maybe their parents, maybe the placement that they have, could be community counselors or school counselors as well. And really we come back in and we write a report to the court saying, here's what the children really want and need in their life to support them. Of those, 95%, about 95% of the children we support are there because of some kind of drug addiction on the parents' part. So drugs are a huge part of this cycle that we're seeing for kids who are in out-of-home placement. About 3/4 of the children are actually girls. No, I'm sorry, 2/3, I got my statistic wrong, are girls, 1/3 are boys. The average age is 11 that we're seeing ours. We support everyone from 18 months to 18 years old, but the average age would come down to the 11. The last piece that I really want you to know is so far we have 2 families that have been reunited. The children moved back in with the parents, and we have 2 more that are in a trial phase at this point too. So we are beginning to see some outcomes. The outcomes take a long time when you're dealing with families who are battling addiction. That can be often a year to a year and a half, 2-year process for them to gain their sobriety. But ultimately, we are seeing some really good results, and I'm really proud of the work that we've put forward. And I promise to come back to you and tell you how we're doing, and I will do so in the future, too. I'll keep you up to date. Thank you. Any questions? All right.
Thank you, Sean. I did want to mention, too, I had gotten a letter in the mail from Janet Knutson in Star Prairie, had been to one of your presentations and was very impressed and thought enough to write a letter in support of the program in hoping that the county can continue to help fund the CASA program. So thank you for that. And next up, we have Roy Schoberg and Bridget Warren also to talk a little bit about CASA.
Yes. Well, I had to wear this hat because Ken asked me to do something special. And so Bridget here, who is the executive director at Restorative Justice, and we've handed out this little flyer to all of you. And we've talked to the St. Croix Valley Bar Association, and they've agreed to partner to make us their kind of pet charity for the year. So we got all those attorneys that are, of course, well known to the judges around here, and everybody wants to be on the judge's good side. So don't be surprised if a number of attorneys also show up at this event. But why am I wearing this hat? And why do I have this on? Because do you love this fish that I'm about to talk about? Bridget, do you love walleye?
I sure love walleye.
See, she loves walleye. And how many of you love to be in that boat and you're kind of waiting, and then the bob, not the bobber, but you let your little jig go all the way down, and pretty soon you get that little tug and you reel it in, and then you can't wait to cook it up. But you don't want me to cook it up. You want to have the chef from, remember the Tavern Restaurant in the village of North Hudson? How good that walleye was? See, I knew I'd make us all kind of have a mouth-watering time here. And so on June 7th at the White Eagle, that chef is going to be serving up walleye. And if you don't like walleye, well, there's something wrong with you. But we do have chicken and vegetables as well. So it's just going to last for a couple hours. We'll be sending out a flyer, a special invitation to everybody. This is your individual way of supporting CASA, because we charge a little bit more than the cost of the fish. So that's going to come at you too. But we're going to have some games and some fun. We might roast an attorney. There might be some lawyer jokes. You probably all know the best ones. So you could spring those on us. You could make fun of me because I'll probably have some other outfit at the time. But Bridget, as you heard, really loves walleye, and she can't wait to get in the boat and reel one in herself. So you're probably all ready for the fishing opening, and if you're a little cold for that and shy away, well, you come to this event, the walleye is going to be good, and you're going to have a good time. So we'll follow up. This is just save the date, June 7th. Make sure you bring this home to your spouse and say, honey, or hey, fella, this is what we're going to do on June 7th. What do you think, right? So thanks for listening, and I didn't even ask for any money here, just to kind of come. I might ask later, but this is just for now. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Roy and Bridget. Any other public comment? Anyone from the public that would like to make comment to the board tonight? Okay, no public comment. We're moving on to our consent agenda. Do we have a motion on the consent agenda? Supervisor Osnes, second. Supervisor Hanson. And I believe it would be appropriate, if you're all okay with that, to just do a voice vote on the consent agenda. I see nodding heads, I guess so. All those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to, I don't believe we have any presentations or recognitions, so we'll move on to our administrator's financial report.
Thank you, Chair Long. The financial report in the packet is through the month of March. I went through the financials. We're tracking right on target where we've been in prior years and where we should be for the budget. So I don't really have anything in particular to point out regarding this financial data. Looking ahead for the budget, one of the new numbers that we've gotten in just recently, I actually read it about an hour and 10 minutes ago, was the Legislative Fiscal Bureau's analysis of the Assembly's proposal for the 2024, or what would impact our 2024 budgets, the next state budget, but sharing of additional revenues. So there's several different packages that the state has been proposing. The one that looks like most likely is the state will share 20% of the sales tax they collect with local municipalities. So it's still being negotiated, so I don't want you to get too attached to any of the dollar amounts. But the Legislative Fiscal Bureau estimated the Assembly's proposal would net about just under $700,000 for St. Croix County. That's quite a bit less than what the governor had emailed me or sent in a letter several weeks ago. He had estimated $1.8 million based upon his budget proposal of the same 20%. So it's the same dollar amount that both parties were talking about, but much different distributions. So that's how come I don't want you to get too attached to whatever the dollar amount is, because it's likely to change between now and the end of June by their deadline for getting the budget approved. But it does look like there will be some additional monies coming into St. Croix County from the state that will help with our 2024 budget. I know that'll impact some of the other discussion points on tonight's agenda items, so I thought I'd point it out now. And then the last thing I was going to point out under my report was we had a bid opening today on the government center. It was the part of bid package 4, but it was the couple of pieces that we didn't have bids on previously. So there was about $9 million of estimated projects still outstanding for those openings. We did receive bids on all of them, some of them multiple bids. We were within $50,000 of that $9 million estimate. So not under budget, but at least we're really close. So that's good news. Other than that, I'd entertain any questions that you may have on the financial reports or any of those other items that I discussed.
Would that 20% sales tax, would be a windfall, not an ongoing dollar amount?
No, it's an ongoing. So what the state is proposing is, because they have such a large surplus, they have more money that they know what to do with, right? So what they'll do is they'll take some of the money that they get, which would be 1% of the sales tax, so 20% of the sales tax, and they would redistribute it around the county. So it's not the sales tax in St. Croix County. We're not getting a portion of that. It's a statewide total. They divide it up on a very convoluted formula. But it's ongoing. So if sales tax goes up or down in future years, that number for us would mirror that change in the state's collection of sales tax. So an ongoing funding source. I think Supervisor Burning raised his hand, Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, thank you. I got to keep looking up at the monitor. Supervisor Burning?
Is it possible for the counties association to go to bat for us to get our part of that collection back to us instead of doing it as a distribution based on however the legislature wants to distribute it, or doing some formula? I mean, the formula is there in the form of a percentage. I guess my real question is the counties association already going to bat for us? And if not, are we in contact with them to do that? Because we have a very high amount of sales tax, and I think it's not right to redistribute that around the state, disproportionate to what we take in for that amount.
Yeah, so the Wisconsin Counties Association has been lobbying for this sharing of revenues from the state, additional revenue sources to the counties. They probably would not argue the point that St. Croix should keep the sales tax that we collect, because there's going to be winners and losers in that. We would obviously be one of the winners, but some of their other members then would be losers in that formula distribution. So they probably wouldn't pick winners and losers between their own membership.
So just to follow up on that though, Ken and Mr. Chair, I mean, winners and losers isn't really determined by the legislature, I wouldn't think, and that's why I'm asking if we know, have they fought for us in that capacity, and are we in, I mean, we're the one collecting that basically by having the environment that we have. So are we fighting for that at all, or are we just kind of letting the counties association do their thing?
Yeah, I don't believe that we've fought for that viewpoint at all, Supervisor Burning.
Is there an appetite for us to do that? I mean, because we would be a loser on that. That's a net loser. So Paula said it's a win that that we're getting it. I like that, but we're also become a loser then if we're not getting what we're actually collecting and having the infrastructure for, if that makes sense. I mean, I guess, Mr. Chair, I guess I would implore you to ask my fellow supervisors if there's an appetite for us to do a resolution asking the counties association to fight for that.
I would suspect that it's more a matter of timing. I don't know that we would have sufficient time to put that together in order for the WCA to really have any impact on the negotiations that are going on right now. That would be my initial thought off the top of my head. Any other thoughts? Supervisor Hanson?
This would be something we'd have to look at for next year or the next budget cycle, because they've established a protocol for this budget cycle, and it's well underway.
Yeah, the state budget is going to be settled by the end of June, because that's the end of their fiscal year. They will have a state budget by then. So, I mean, we're 7 weeks out. So I don't believe lobbying the WCA to lobby the state is going to be an effective course of action. I would encourage you to reach out to your legislative contacts and speak with them directly. That's probably our best option at this hour of the game.
Other questions, comments? Okay, we're going to move on to our first business item. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Supervisor Otino?
Yes, thank you. I didn't know you were moving on. I have a question regarding the monies from the bonds that we make, that I think we're close to $5 million. I don't recall, and maybe I'm wrong, that the board has ever had a motion and determined that that money should be gone and taken back into the project of the $80 million for the addition. I think it was just, and maybe I'm wrong, I think it was just, well, the money's there, it came from the project, so it's going to go back into the project. And that makes the project, in my opinion, $5 million over budget. You came to us for $90 million originally, and we said no. You came back to us for $80 million, and well, myself, I still said no, but it passed. My concern is that $5 million, did somebody just said, hey, this is where it's going to go? Because that should be back into the budget, and if that's the case, I think we could use that budget money for a lot of the ales we're missing right now, a lot of the pieces. And the other piece of that is at $80 million, I don't want another penny going on top of that money. Not a nickel, not a penny, not a nickel. And it's my opinion that if we don't have enough money for chairs for the supervisors and desks and tables, we can stand for our meetings. I think that's got to be the end of the line. We have not been very fair stewards, I think, of this money for the citizens of St. Croix County. Thank you.
Yep. Fair point, Supervisor Otino. So it's about 2 to 3 million, not 5. So just, I want you to have the right number there. So we've only been showing, when we look at estimated costs on the project, we've said, okay, well, we're at 80, now we're at 81, we're at 83, we're at 82. So that number fluctuates, usually right around that 80 to low 80. So we said, well, how can we cover that without additional borrowing? Well, this is one of the ways we can do it. So we've been showing that as part of our analysis. And as Supervisor Shirley had pointed out, we still have within that $5 million of contingency funds. So, I mean, we could still finish below $80 million on the total project. It really just depends on late in the project what type of change order things happen once they start opening up these walls and stuff like that with the remodel. So the goal is to finish within the 80 million, but if it does go over, I want you to know that we do have options of how we would be able to cover that, and that's what we've been presenting.
then I'm still not, I don't recall that we ever said that that money should go there. Is there a bylaw that I'm missing or a rule that I'm missing that that money should be appropriated back to the project? Because the project in my mind is 80 million. And that's what, and even that was a lot.
Right.
I even pared down from the 90 million. So should the board have a motion to determine if that money further is going to be used for the project? Because I don't believe it should be. Thank you.
And at some point, that might be. I guess it's really maybe later in the project, once I know if I actually need it or not. So if I come back and I say, well, I'm going to have 81 million, so I'm going to have to ask the county board where that million comes from. So do you want to take it from the interest earnings? Do you want to take it from the KIP? Do you want to take it from fund balance? There'd be multiple options. But yes, to your point, we would have to clarify that at some point with county board action.
Maybe the other way to answer that question is we don't really know right now. It's too early to tell. But you bring up a really valid point. Thank you. Supervisor Hanson.
I just wanted to recognize that, and I recognize Supervisor Otino's point, and I respect it very much. But I want to recognize that we do rely on a committee system, and this is the work of the administration committee, and that these questions belong at the administration committee before they come to the county board. That doing the work of a committee before it gets to the board, in my opinion, is sometimes bogs us down, and it works against the committee system. So that's something just to kind of bear in mind as an operational or just the way the board ought to operate. So, thanks.
Any other specific questions for the county administrator regarding the financial information or the building expansion? Okay, I guess now we are ready to move on to our business items. The first item is a resolution amending the budget to utilize fund balance in 2023 and 2024 to fund public safety positions within the sheriff's office in light of the failed referendum. Can we start with a motion, please? Supervisor Cook, we have a second. Supervisor Counter. Supervisor Cook?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you all know, Supervisor Shirley at our Committee of the Whole meeting brought a suggestion to fund additional fund positions that were not passed by the referendum. This came to the Administration Committee. We had some good conversation there, I thought. Supervisor Shirley kindly came to the meeting as well to share more details about his proposal. And we discussed the opportunities to fund positions and fill those public safety, will help support that public safety concerns, but also to make sure that we are thoughtfully budgeting for the future. And so the item here on the resolution here tonight on the agenda, I see really as a compromise between those two pieces, essentially funds for positions of using fund balance for the next couple years, but then also creates an understanding that there needs to be a budget source for that moving forward, because I personally feel like we want to carefully budget for the future and not encumber projected sources of income if we don't have them, and there's unknowns there. So the Administration Committee approved this unanimously.
Supervisor Burning.
I've got a few points I'd like to bring up. First and foremost, I know Sheriff Knudsen is on, and I want to make sure that he is okay with this, like to start us out. So, Sheriff, I hate to put you on the spot, but we want to get, well, I'm not going to put you on the spot, Sheriff. I hope that you understand that we're trying to bring reinforcements here for you. I do have a motion that I'd like to make for an amendment, because well, let me make this motion, then I'll explain why this motion needs to be made. So I make a motion that we strike lines 32 through 35 on this. The reason I bring this motion up, and I would love to have a second on it, but before I get the second, I'd love to explain why this motion is being brought up. When we hire employees, no matter what area we hire, we do not put this clause into any of our resolutions that we use when we're giving pay increases, when we're doing benefit changes, wage grid realignments, position realignments. I find it disheartening that we would have this particular 4 lines in this resolution because the sheriff has explicitly said hiring positions, and I realize that it's on attrition, but even still, hiring positions in this particular manner is not the way to go. And so eliminating these 4 lines will show our commitment as a county board that we are willing to make this a priority, law enforcement a priority, and also the people of our county that need this a priority. So that's why I make this motion, and I would love to get a second from someone, please.
We have a second on this motion.
I would second that.
Supervisor Lind. It might be appropriate at this point, if it's okay, for Sheriff Knutson to comment on that particular amendment to the resolution.
Well, I don't know if it's appropriate for me to comment on that amendment. I will say sustainability is important. As I mentioned at the last meeting, if somebody's looking at their future and between us and say Hudson or New Richmond PD, and there is something that they know that they have here, we have a better shot at holding on to those employees. I know it's through attrition, and I appreciate everything done. Supervisor Burning was going to put me on the spot, but I'll say looking at this is a little better than the Wednesday morning after the referendum. So this will help, but there is still more need. But this is a start that I appreciate that Supervisor Shirley has come up with, as well as you, Supervisor Burning.
I had a question.
Okay, Supervisor Leaf.
Sorry, I can't figure out how to find the hand little emoji. But it looks like in this resolution, it also says going back to voters in 2025. So is that the plan as well?
I'm not sure. It was one possibility. I'm not sure
Okay.
it was definite a plan, but
Well,
it was.
I read that and I thought that was probably what would be happening. And I understand why this was written this way because I know there was concern about creating a structural deficit. So I understand that's why the 2025 was put in there. If I understand that correctly, right?
Other comments or questions on the motion to amend the resolution? Supervisor Otino.
Yeah, looking at this, you know my position from past meetings. I am 2,000% in favor of all these positions. I have 2 problems with this right now. The first being that the voters said no. Now, I believe that they said no to the monies, not necessarily no to extra security, law enforcement, and public protection. My problem with this, if we're having to go back to the voters again in 2025, we're not doing our job. This should be into the budget and then put into the budget on an ongoing basis to fund the people that we need to have St. Croix County secure. I don't see, if this is going to go back to the referendum and not be included in budget by taking monies away from other departments, I will not be in favor of this. Thank you.
Supervisor Anderson.
Yeah, I just want to say I'm in favor of the amendment for the reasons that have been stated. I think we should be able to build this in the budget by, I know it'll be a new board, but by 2025. And so I'm in favor of striking lines 32 through 35 for that reason.
Supervisor Carlson.
Yeah, the feedback I got from why it failed was we were told to go do our jobs and figure out how to do it without increasing their money. So they want the public safety. So I would be in favor for this also. I think if we went back to referendum, it'd just be a waste of time because I believe it would fail just like the last one did.
Supervisor Cook.
When we talk about the language in here, and I think, I can't remember, what of my fellow colleagues said, we don't do this for any other position. We actually do this for other positions, for example, the ARPA funding, or anytime we have a grant-funded position. We know that there's a limited time, we still hire folks, it's a known time frame where they're hired, and then that money is gone unless it gets put back into the budget. I'm very concerned about taking this language out because I'm very uncomfortable operating on a structural deficit, which we would be doing going forward. And I think we can say, well, we would need to find the money in the future from our budget, but we also don't know what the other needs that are going to come forward in this coming years. And when we had the committee of the whole discussion, we heard many departments that are saying we need things. I mean, for example, we need folks that are helping to work on some of our mental health issues. Those positions aren't in here. We're already acknowledging that we're going to prioritize these public safety positions, but to just say moving forward that we're going to keep prioritizing them without even having a chance to look at the current scenario that we're at in a future budget year, I just don't think is a good idea. So I feel like keeping this language in here is important. We do it with other positions, and the voters will have an opportunity in 2025 if we go to referendum. We all have ideas about why the referendum failed, but ultimately we don't know. We haven't polled every single voter here in St. Croix County who voted against this, and so we really don't know. So I would recommend that we do not vote for this amendment.
Supervisor Hanson?
We're required by law to balance the budget, and this is really saying that we're not going to add to the tax levy. Well, not adding to the tax levy when we have levy restrictions is pretty much just an obvious fact of life as far as being part of county government. Taking this language away isn't going to take away the fact that we have to balance this budget. I think we need to leave this language in here just because it is a requirement of good management.
Other comments? Supervisor Shirley.
I do agree with the amendment. I think the point is not that we have to come up with a balanced budget. Everybody knows that. I think that the point is that the sheriff has to go out and recruit people to fill these positions, and if he has those lines on there and some of these recruits find this document, they're going to look at it and say, I'm not going to apply to that job because it doesn't guarantee me past 2024. Why would people apply for that? It just doesn't make a lot of sense, and I think the sheriff has enough trouble finding applicants that we don't need to put this kind of language in there to make it harder for him. And I know we need to vote on Mr. Burning's resolution, but I have a further amendment to that when we get to that point.
Other comments? Okay, at this point, since this is a budget amendment, or amendment to the resolution, it only takes a majority, but I think a roll call vote would be appropriate rather than a voice vote.
Supervisor Lind?
Oh, I should clarify, we are voting on the amendment to the resolution, not the resolution itself, in eliminating lines 32 through 35. Sorry.
I vote yes.
Supervisor Anderson?
Yes.
Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Leaf?
No.
Supervisor Cook?
No.
Supervisor Burning?
Yes.
Supervisor Attino?
Yes.
Supervisor Fiedler?
No.
Supervisor Osnes? No. Supervisor Counter? Yes. Supervisor Hanson?
No.
Supervisor Shirley?
Yes.
Supervisor Telejohn,
No.
Supervisor Carlson,
Yes.
Supervisor Barkalow,
Yes.
Supervisor Swanepoel,
No.
Supervisor Van Sumeren,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramberg.
No.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So that was 10 to 8.
Passed 10 to 8.
Okay, that amendment passes. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to considering the amended resolution. Supervisor Shirley?
I think that we heard from the sheriff in committee of the whole that he needs these officers, but I think we're missing a couple things. And my presentation before laid out what I thought, but for now, I would like to see this resolution amended to add the CHIPS officer and one investigator onto this this motion or resolution.
Can I clarify that? So you're making a motion to add the investigator for the sheriff's office and the CHIPS attorney to this resolution?
Yes.
And is there a second?
Second, as long as we know what the dollar amount is.
Supervisor Carlson beat you to it. Thank you.
So now I don't have to calculate the dollar amount? Oh, all right. Okay,
Can we please get the dollar amount prior to voting on this amendment?
yes. So the investigator position is $137,000 per year, so we'd be looking at half a year for that position. And the CHIPS attorney is at $160,000. Carry the zero. All right. Add the vehicle. Yeah. All right. It's $120,000 in additional cost for 2023.
Can I clarify, Supervisor Burning, then did you second that motion officially then?
No, Supervisor Carlson.
Oh,
was the
Supervisor,
second.
okay. Sorry.
Okay, so the amendment on the floor is to add the investigator and CHIPS attorney, and for 2023, that would have an impact on our current budget for $120,000. And that's strictly for 2023, is that correct? Was that your amendment? Just to clarify?
It would be, the vehicles I split up into multiple years, but I'd actually be purchasing the vehicle in 2023. So it'd actually be $50,000 for the vehicle. No, the investigators we leased. Never mind. It would be $120,000.
Can I do the cards?
Yeah. Yeah, carry the zero. Yeah. So for the sheriff's deputies, and just to clarify why I'm so confused. So the sheriff's deputies, for patrol, we purchase the squad vehicles. They run roughly $50,000. That's what I have in the resolution currently is for the 4 deputies we purchase. For investigators, we actually lease the vehicles. So the lease would be less than that. So it'd be below $20,000 for half the year. But $20,000 per year is what we allocate for that. Roughly $100,000 in wages and benefits for the remainder of the calendar year. So $120,000 is good.
Point of inquiry.
Supervisor Burning?
Can the motion be read exactly as how we're voting on it, please, including the dollar amount?
Yeah. So what I would look at doing is the resolution that you can see in front of you would be, now therefore be it resolved, St. Croix County Board of Supervisors hereby amends the 2023 budget to use fund balance to fund 4 patrol deputies one investigator, and one CHIPS attorney for 6 months, covering the remainder of 2023. The dollar amounts would then be adjusted for wages, benefits, and vehicle expenses, increased by roughly $120,000. That's how the resolution would look amended.
I have a question.
Supervisor Leaf?
What about 2024?
Yeah, I know. Okay, so for 2024, we're doing budget priorities as the next agenda item, but those two positions are at the top of the list or near the top of the list. So they're likely to be funded through our regular funding for 2024. So it's a little bit different than the 4 patrol deputies that are on here.
I just wanted to make sure that we weren't creating a problem like we just eliminated with the amendment. So that's my question.
Supervisor Shirley?
To make this easier, let's just pull 2024 off of this resolution and make this just 2023. 2024 we'll take care of in this budget process. So let's just have the resolution say 4 officers, 1 CHIPS attorney, 1 investigator for the remainder of 2023.
I can just clarify that. If you can vote on the motion that's on the floor now, then you can make another amendment to strike 2024, just so we can make it clean.
Okay, and I think I'll ask our administrator the obvious question I think we're probably all thinking, at least I am. What is your comfort level or the impact on our 2023 budget in terms of funding these additional 2 positions, I'm assuming through fund balance or otherwise?
Yeah, the use of fund balance is a policy decision by the county board. So there's generally, there's more things I suppose you could do with fund balance, but generally 3 things you can do with fund balance. In the order I typically rank them in is, if we have excess fund balance, I recommend that you transfer that to the capital improvement fund so that we can avoid future borrowings. We can maintain the infrastructure we have and avoid borrowing costs and save interest expense. Second would be to use that excess fund balance to apply to the debt service fund so we can buy down the tax levy and reduce the tax impact for the taxpayers. They always seem to like that. And then third is you can use fund balance to cover one-time expenses. And so covering positions for part of a year that are going to be picked up by a different funding source next year would qualify as that one-time expenditure. So purely a policy decision, an extra $120,000 does not panic me, no.
Supervisor Hanson.
We're creating a structural deficit. In doing so, could this have an effect on our credit rating, our bond credit rating?
So one of the things that the credit rating agency takes a look at is our fund balance. So applying fund balance in any particular year, or really a fairly nominal structural deficit that we have set up, probably would not affect our credit rating.
Other questions, comments on the amendment to add the CHIPS attorney and the investigator to the 2023 budget? Supervisor Carlson?
I'm not following something. If we fund it for this year, but then later on don't fund it for 24, that could happen?
So the funding for the positions for 2024 are not established until the county board adopts the 2024 budget. So yeah, it could happen. It's really your control though. So if you're approving it now, I'd anticipate that you would continue to support it going into the 2024 budget.
Thank you.
Other comments? Supervisor Fiedler.
I'm going to support the Shirley amendment. I agree with what the administrator said, the three uses of it. We've put millions into KIP, that's not needed. We do have a good fund balance. I know later in the fiscal year, after we know from the state of Wisconsin, probably in August, what we're going to get overall in funding, I know my intention is to make a substantial amendment to reduce taxes. And I've talked with the administrator and others about that, and I think that there's plenty of money in the account now for this one-time expense. There's not room for a lot more one-time expenses, but for this one-time expense, I think there's money, and a tax reduction, and we'll probably have to vote on that in September. So I'm going to vote yes for the Shirley amendment.
Any other comments? So at this point, we're amending the resolution, so it would be a majority vote. Would that be correct? And then we will vote on the entire resolution. So at this point in time, we'll do a roll call vote on the amendment, which adds the CHIPS attorney and the investigator to the 2023, to the resolution for the 2023 budget.
And question? That's
Question.
on top
Supervisor,
of the proposed. What we have on page 34, that's in addition to, for the last 6 months, July through December, the four deputies, 1 investigator, 2 correction deputies, and 1 CHIPS. We're adding, correct?
We're adding
4 deputies, 1 investigator, and 1 CHIPS attorney. So it goes from 4 deputies, from 4 positions to 6 positions. The impact for fiscal year 2023 is, with 4 deputies, $464,000. It would go to $584,000.
And it's package page 32. And that might be if you were looking at a further package packet page.
Oh. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Make sure that we're clarifying what we're voting on here and adding these 2 positions to the resolution. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're ready to vote. Christine?
Supervisor Fiedler?
Yes.
Supervisor Counter?
Yes.
Supervisor Hanson?
Yes.
Supervisor Shirley?
Yes.
Supervisor Telejohn?
Yes.
Supervisor Carlson?
Yes.
Supervisor Barkalow?
Yes.
Supervisor Swanepoel?
Yes.
Supervisor Van Summeren?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramberg?
Yes.
Supervisor Lind?
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson?
Yes.
Supervisor Long?
Yes.
Supervisor Leaf?
Yes.
Supervisor Cook?
No.
Supervisor Burning?
Yes.
And Supervisor Attino?
Yes.
Okay, that amendment passes. So we're now back to the original amended resolution. Supervisor Osnes?
Oh, yeah.
A quick comment. I don't think I was included in that vote.
Supervisor Osnes?
Okay, so now we are back to the original resolution with the 2 additional positions added for 2023. Are there any other comments or questions? Supervisor Ramberg.
Well, I appreciate the comments up to now, and the sequence that the administrator spoke of with carrying forward fund balances. As a financial background myself, I'm uncomfortable with that type of thought process because I don't want us eating our seed corn and boxing ourselves up for that the points that we spoke of earlier on the structural deficit. But in the meantime, we need to strike a balance to move forward with our priorities. And I understand this resolution was a compromise, which is moving in the right direction. I just wanted to go on record as appreciating that, but still be a little uncomfortable with us doing it this way. But I see that it's not everything, and that helps me with knowing that we're biting off pieces. And I appreciate the offer that came up from Supervisor Shirley And I just wanted to go on record of that. And I'm sure a lot of us have that same jitteriness of this, but I just wanted to go on record of bringing that up for those that are looking at this from a distance.
Other comments? Okay, at this point, we are ready to vote on the amended resolution. We will do a roll call vote. It will take a 2/3 majority since it's a budget.
I have a question.
amendment.
Sorry, Supervisor.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you for speaking up, Supervisor Leaf.
So were we, was somebody going to amend to take the 2024 out of it entirely? Because that wasn't in the last amendment.
It didn't come up. So I think we're good to go with the resolution as it is with the amendment.
Mr. Chair?
Yes,
point of
Supervisor
inquiry.
Burning?
Regarding that, we can't commit future, we have to vote on, I'm trying to think of how to say this. We can't commit to a budget vote in this document when the budget hasn't even been presented to us. I think that's what Supervisor Leaf and others were talking about. So I think that actually needs to be taken out of there because we can't have that line in there. Or maybe I'm wrong, but that's my inquiry is, can we have that line in there?
Supervisor
Sorry
Burning.
for rambling on my inquiry.
Supervisor Burning, I think it's instructions to the county administrator when he's developing the budget for 2024. I suppose you could change the word shall to may, or you could strike lines 29 to 30. So it's yeah, and still vote differently later on.
No,
so.
I understand. So that's fine. I was just looking at it differently, but now that I read it, I understand. Yep.
Supervisor Cook?
Well, now other people brought up questions, so now I have one. So I heard 584,000 for 2023, right, for these positions. So in the 2024 budget, that's another 584,000 if we don't take it out of fund balance?
It would be, the 2024 amount would still be 529,000. Given that the CHIPS attorney investigator are probably going to have a different funding source in 2024.
Okay.
I fully anticipate they'll be incorporated in a normal process for the 2024 budget.
Okay. Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, at this point, I believe we're ready to vote on the amended resolution. We will do a roll call vote. It will take 2/3 majority.
Supervisor Leaf,
Yes.
Supervisor Cook,
No?
Supervisor Burning,
Yes.
Supervisor Attino,
Yes.
Supervisor Fiedler. Yes. Supervisor Osnes. Yes. Supervisor Counter. Yes. Supervisor Hanson.
Yes.
Supervisor Shirley.
Yes.
Supervisor Telejohn.
Yes.
Supervisor Carlson.
Yes.
Supervisor Barkalow.
Yes.
Supervisor Swanepoel.
Yes.
Supervisor Van Summeren.
Yes.
Supervisor Ramberg.
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson.
Yes.
Supervisor Lind.
Yes.
Supervisor Long.
Yes. That motion carries. We didn't leave anybody out this time, did we? Okay, that resolution, that motion passes. Congratulations to our sheriff. And we're moving forward.
I just want to say thank you very much for everybody that went above and beyond the architecture of this. Supervisors that came up with this, Administrator Whitford, getting this written up, but that goes a long way. Our staff and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, and speaking of our 2024 budget, our next business item is a resolution establishing the 2024 budget priorities. Do we we have a motion? Supervisor Cook, second. Supervisor Fiedler. Supervisor Cook?
I won't even attempt to go through this. I will defer to Administrator Witt to cover what we talked about in committee of whole to establish this.
Yeah, so what we've have presented in front of you is the priorities for the county administrator in establishing the 2024 budget. So think of it this way. We have this laundry list of 16 items. So the revenues I will find out about over the next few months. We'll have those become known commodities, known amounts, and I will go down this list for expenses, and when I run out of money, that's it. I draw a line. Things above the line get funded in the budget, and the things below the line don't get funded. So that's what establishing the priorities does. It's really the starting point for me to bring in front of you a balanced budget. So it doesn't commit you to change your mind later on, to say, you know what, after a few more months of thinking about it, I think this should be in there and this should be out of there. You can still change your mind, but it gives me instructions of what the priorities are as of today anyways, for me to start working on that 2024 budget.
Comments, questions? This is really the most, excuse me, significant part of beginning of the budget. So Supervisor Rotino.
Thank you. I just want to clarify then, what we just passed with the new positions, those are stable and stay there, and then these are additional positions on top of what we just approved. Is that a correct statement?
So the two positions that were added through the amendment are actually lines 1 and lines 4 in the priority list.
Okay.
Yep.
So they were already
Yeah.
taken care of in that.
Right.
Not on top of. So
Correct.
basically, 1 and 4 have already been done.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah, and if you remember the exercise we did with the $1 million that all of you distributed, I think we'll get through 1 through 6. That's where I think we get through with $1 million. So I talked earlier this evening about additional money from the state. So if additional money from the state comes in, that line will move down. So that's how this will work.
Supervisor Burning.
Yes, yeah, I didn't mean to lower the hand, sorry. I'm looking at number 13. Is there an appetite to move that up even more, or do you think that we should just leave every 13 where it's at? And I'm asking you, Mr. Chair.
You're asking my opinion?
Yes. Well, we're supposed to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, I think that it's in the appropriate place as it was discussed and approved by the administration committee. So I'll stand by the decision of the committee.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Okay, Supervisor Shirley. Okay, Supervisor Counter.
Just had one question in the priorities and how this is set up. Do you know, we didn't identify any numbers and how this is by any means, but do we see that, I guess one of the concerns I got as a whole is, are we keeping the employees of the county whole with all of this, with their increases? Because obviously we know insurance increases, all these other things. Are we keeping the employees at a minimum at a whole where they're not going to end up with a loss with how we're calculating this?
Keeping them whole, do you mean a wage increase that's greater than their health insurance increase? Is that what you mean, or keeping up with inflation? Probably not to inflation. So what's your definition of keeping them whole?
Well, if they take an increase for insurance becomes a greater amount, then they actually recognize a loss. And I'm just, what my question is, are they at least staying where we don't, in my eyes anyway, would not want to see them where anybody's taking a loss.
So their benefit increase is not ending up with a net paycheck decrease compared to the prior year, right? Yeah. So I don't know yet. So these priorities don't necessarily get into that level of detail. I don't anticipate we'll be in that position, but until I know exactly how much dollars are available, I really won't know. And I don't really know until the end of August when our net new construction number comes in. I don't know anything until then, for certain. I know some things, but not everything.
Supervisor Shirley?
I think what Supervisor Counter is asking about, and maybe Administrator Witt, if you could elaborate what you did on the administration committee and talk about that 1% increase to health insurance premiums. You did a great job at administration, but I don't know that everybody else heard that.
Yeah, we're still working through the details of our health insurance renewal. But one of the good news pieces that we had was when the actuary looked at our claims over the last year, they were 8% lower than the prior year. So we had kind of a ramped up year sort of during COVID, and then the total claims came down about 8%. So was the year before that a high year anomaly? That's kind of what we're projecting or predicting right now. And so we're able to readjust our actuarial estimate down 8%. That doesn't mean insurance premiums will actually decrease 8% because the health insurance inflation factor is about 8%. But it does mean we'll come back a lot closer to zero. So I would not be surprised if we're in the 1% range for a health insurance premium increase. Stay tuned for further information.
Supervisor Cook?
I have a question. The justice support case managers, those are the ones that are ARPA funded, correct? That we need to fund?
Yes.
They are, okay. And then I also would like to make an amendment to this list. Given that we just voted to offer public safety in our sheriff's office a number of positions, which public safety is a very important service that we provide, but we provide a lot of important services as a county. And so I would propose, my amendment would be that we move either item 11 or 12 up in place of item number 8. I don't know if we'll even get to it, but it's another position in the sheriff's office, and I think that we need to recognize there's a lot of important things we do, and our HHS department, what they do in HHS directly also impacts often the activity that happens for the sheriff's office. And so I think we should recognize that and move one of those positions up in place of number 8. So that would be my amendment.
I'll second that.
And just to clarify, was that one or the other or both?
Well, for compromise, I would say one or the other.
I'd be 11. So the children's services, there is a huge need in children's services. You hear all the time about the increase in caseload, the CASA program that the courts have supported creating to help because there are so many children that are entering the system in St. Croix County. When I started 7 years ago, we had about 50 children on average that we were dealing with, and we're well over 100 now.
All right, so I will defer to staff suggestion of number 11.
Yep.
And do we have a second on that? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, I did it.
Supervisor Leaf, thank you. Okay, discussion, and just to clarify, we're moving number 11 up to number 8 and adjusting the numbers of the others. Comments, questions, discussions? Supervisor Shirley?
Just a clarification, the resolution that we just voted for the 4 sheriff's positions, this budget priority list was made prior to that. So those 4 positions correct me if I'm wrong, sit in the number 13 spot right now. So would it not be more appropriate to have those 4 positions be in the number 1 spot? And then do what the amendment was?
So those 4 investigator, or 4 sheriff patrol deputies, the resolution tells me that they should be in the budget, and I should use fund balance to fund them if necessary. So they're going to be in the budget as positions. The revenue for them may not be a new revenue source unless I find some to get to 13. So they would be funded through fund balance instead, which would create the structural deficit going into 25 that we've mentioned. So that's how I'm interpreting the layout of that.
Other comments, discussion, questions?
Could you read back the amendment, just so I'm clear?
Yes, so the amendment is by Supervisor Cook to move number 11, which is line 29, Fund 1 HHS Children's Services Ongoing Case Manager, to number 8, Fund 2nd position in the Sheriff's Office, which is investigator, and then they'll move down accordingly.
Yep.
And second,
Swapping or moving down, Carrie? Everything else down or swap?
I would like to swap them.
so let me clarify. Swapping number 11, which is line 29, with number 8, which is line 26. And that was seconded by Supervisor Leaf.
Other discussion, questions?
Yes,
Okay.
I have one, Mr.
Okay,
Chair.
Supervisor Burning.
Would, I could support this as a compromise as long as it's not a swap. Would the supervisor be willing to change that portion?
If I leave it as a swap and we vote on that amendment, then can I make another amendment?
Yes.
I would like to leave as a swap right now. Only because I feel like the other pieces, if we just swap it, I feel like those other pieces are important. I mean, we also heard from our staff and from directors that we have an issue losing staff to the Twin Cities, to other areas. I think when we talked about this when we did the rankings, and I know we don't have the amount in for the COLA for employee compensation, but I think it's pretty small. And so I think we need to recognize the value of the employees that we have. I would like to keep them. We have great employees. And so if there is an opportunity to, because I know we don't know particularly what it is, but before in our document it was like 0.6%. So that's not very much. And so if we can find some money to have additional employee compensation to keep the employees we have, and that includes across all of our departments, then I would like to keep that, this is why I want to swap them instead.
Supervisor Hanson?
I agree. I think it's a good idea. We've given an awful lot to the Sheriff's Department at this point. There's so many children in out-of-home placement. We need to recognize that, and I think we need to recognize the problems that we're having with retention and recruitment of employees, and go with just swapping these. It's a good idea.
Other comment? Yes, Supervisor Ortino.
Thank you. Being the fact that this was based on the exercise that every one of the supervisors participated in, I don't see there's any reason to change it. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against children's services. I don't want anybody coming out with that. All of these are important. All the way down to number 16, they're important. And there's a lot more on top of that we can try to fund. But right now, I think we need to concentrate on the overall security of St. Croix County right now. There are many neighborhoods across the river right now that do not have a Walmart, do not have a Walgreens in them. do not have an Aldi's anymore because they've closed. And the reason behind that is everything is out of control. It's not the whole entire, but there are communities, and that is spreading, and I think we need to protect our, as far as economic parks and bicycle paths are nice, but if we don't have that means to support our businesses and our community and our people, then we're going to really let them down in the future. To me, I think we should just keep it the way it is, based on the fact that this is how everybody put in their chips that day. Thank you.
Other comments before we vote? Supervisor Cook.
Can you indulge me one more comment? My one final comment would be that the work that is done in HHS does impact public safety, so I would encourage supervisors to vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson.
Yeah, and I know that I was listening this morning on public radio that the crime rate in St. Paul went down in 2022. For what it's worth, I think we have to look at real numbers, not just throw out opinions when we're talking about things like that, because if you don't have hard numbers, it's fear-mongering, and we can't just spend public money based on opinion.
I'll send you the information I have.
Okay, I think we're ready to vote on this amendment, and that's replacing or swapping line number 8, line 26, and line 29, number 11. Is that correct? And I think we should do a roll call vote on this amendment, please.
Supervisor Ramberg,
Yes.
Supervisor Van Summeren,
Yes.
Supervisor Swanepoel,
Yes.
Supervisor Barkalow,
No.
Supervisor Carlson,
Yes.
Supervisor Telejohn,
Yes.
Supervisor Shirley,
Yes.
Supervisor Hanson,
Yes?
Supervisor Counter, Supervisor Osnes, Supervisor Fiedler, Supervisor Attino,
No.
Supervisor Burning,
No.
Supervisor Cook,
Yes.
Supervisor Leaf,
Yes.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Anderson,
No.
and Supervisor Lind.
No.
Thank you.
The motion, the amendment passes. We're back to the original the original amended resolution regarding the priorities. Any other further comments or questions on the resolution and the motion? All right, I think we're ready to vote on this one as well. I think we should also do a roll call vote, please.
Supervisor Lind,
I'll vote yes.
Supervisor Anderson,
Yes.
Supervisor Long,
Yes.
Supervisor Leaf,
Yes.
Supervisor Cook,
Yes.
Supervisor Burning,
Yes.
Supervisor Attino,
Yes.
Supervisor Fiedler, Supervisor Osnes, Supervisor Counter,
Yes.
Supervisor Hanson,
Yes?
Supervisor Shirley,
Yes.
Supervisor Telejohn,
Yes.
Supervisor Carlson,
Yes.
Supervisor Barkalow,
Yes.
Supervisor Swanepoel,
Yes.
Supervisor Van Summeren,
Yes.
Supervisor Ramberg.
Yes.
Okay, that resolution passes. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to our next business item. The amendment, resolution amending discretionary pay policy for healthcare campus. Can we have a motion, please? Supervisor Cook, second. Supervisor Anderson. Who would like to describe this change?
I mean, I can touch on it briefly without details. I mean, essentially, hopefully everyone has read what's happening in their packet, but essentially, we're shifting the policy to, we have a lot of folks that looks like they are working part-time, and then they're looking for incentive payment for the hours. And so basically, we're trying to incentivize people to work full-time. Is that kind of the overall shift of it, Audrey? Yeah? Okay. So this will actually allow us to better serve our healthcare campuses with employees as well.
Questions? Comments, discussion? Supervisor Lind.
As a healthcare employee, I do have one amendment to make to this on, is it page 43, where it talks about the shift diff. I think that your end time on your shift diff for the weekend needs to go to 7 a.m. on Sunday, so that they're paid the diff all night long, or they're never going to cover the Sunday evening, the Sunday overnight shift. Sorry. What time do the shifts begin on the healthcare campus? And would that go until 6 a.m. to cover that shift?
I don't know if Audrey or Bob knows the correct answer to that, but I think the shifts go to 6.
So if it states that the end time is 10 p.m. on Sunday for a weekend shift differential, does that hold it that it no longer pays that from 11 to 7 in the morning into Monday?
Yeah. I think that C shift is a shift. It's a whole shift. It's the start and stop time for the shift.
Okay, so the end time of 10 p.m. on Sunday doesn't end the diff, or it does?
Right.
I think it ends the weekend shift pay differential, and C shift would then apply, which would be from 10 p.m. on Sunday night till 6 a.m. Monday morning would be then C shift, if I'm reading this correctly.
Right. As a healthcare person that would staff, that was a nightmare to do that, to cut that off for a Monday, for a Sunday overnight. So I don't know if we can amend that to cover, or if we just leave it alone and they work it out.
Because that's actually part of the, not part of the resolution, however. So I'm not sure that we
can't touch that?
change that
Okay.
at this point. It would have to be in relation to the resolution.
Yeah, I think anything is possible, but what I would say on that is we didn't identify that as a current issue.
Okay.
So we can go back and do some further analysis, and if we identify that's an issue for us, we'd be glad to bring that forward
Perfect.
as a separate resolution.
Thank you.
Supervisor Hanson?
Yeah, I just say, I know, you see, my dog works up at that health center, so I hang out up there sometimes, and Sandy Hackmiller is the director, and Kristen Nygaard is the head of nursing. These guys are really sharp, and if this is what they're asking for, and this is what they operate on, I trust them, so if it means anything. So before we change anything, I'd want to talk to them and say what's going on.
Okay, other comments, questions? Okay, I believe a voice vote would be sufficient on this particular resolution. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we'll move on to number 4, resolution supporting exploring options for development of a regional crisis stabilization center. And what's that? Oh, yes. Supervisor Osnes, there is a resolution here, correct? I'm sorry, I'm behind it. Okay, got it. I'm sorry. Okay, motion by Supervisor Osnes. Do we have a second? Supervisor Telejohn. Who would like to address the explanation?
And Bob Rohr is here also.
And yeah, Bob, I think you're up.
Is this on? Yeah. Good evening. So this resolution was to seek your support for pursuing options around a regional crisis stabilization center. So we would, with your support, look for funding, look for facilities, look for whatever option we could, on a regional basis to serve people in mental health and addiction crisis locally. It prevents us from having to transport people to places like Winnebago. It benefits law enforcement. It helps a population that currently is not well served here. So I just, before I go looking into options and advocating for funding, I'd just like to know if we have your support in doing that.
Questions? Oh, Supervisor Anderson.
This is more of a comment. This is kind of a follow-up to, I don't remember exactly what time it was, August or September maybe last year, where we were looking at a specific grant that ended up falling through before it came to the full board, so it was on the agenda and got dropped immediately. But this is, for a local center, like Bob said, so we don't have to send people across the state, because that's hard on everybody involved.
Other questions, comments? Supervisor Barkalow.
Supervisor Lynn had her hand up first.
Okay. And just to piggyback off of that, when that grant came through, we were proposing that this would be the Kitty Roads building that we would be trying to implement as the housing for that. And I strenuously object to adding this type of a medical intervention close to a nursing home, on that touching wing, where you add some volatile medication requiring patients, or sometimes they're even criminal, I guess, right next to Grandma and Grandpa. And I just think that if we do go through with something like this, that Kitty Roads would not be the place that should go.
Supervisor Barkalow?
May I ask Bob a question? That Bob? As far as other counties interested in joining with us, and then funding the mechanism for Winnebago currently, is it the state or is it a county operated?
It's a county expense.
Okay.
It's what's called an IMD, an Institution for Mental Disease. Medicaid can't be used to pay for client care there. So that's an expense that we either pay for out of tax levy or whatever funding we have, or we look at recovering some of that through third-party billing.
Okay.
But it's a small fraction of what the cost is.
And then just a quick follow-up, if the Baldwin Hospital hadn't been demolished, that might have been a great place for something like this.
Potentially, I think, and the reason, obviously we look at any safety concerns for a facility like this, but it would be primarily for nonviolent people who are ill with mental health diagnoses or addiction disorders. But the reason we were looking at Kitty Roads was an expense issue as well. First of all, the facility was designed properly for this to begin with, so we wouldn't have to do a lot of modifications. Beyond that, the cost of either leasing or buying or finding another facility and then modifying it to be appropriate for this population would be super expensive. So we'd be talking about a lot more money than what we had originally applied for through the state for $2 million. That would have just barely covered the staff expenses, and we weren't including facility costs in that. So as we look, though, going forward, as we look for facilities and we look for a way to do this, the facility cost is a major expense that we would have to consider when we're asking for funding. Again, we wouldn't rush into anything without fully considering any safety concerns that would be a part of the proposal. And I would bring forward proposals, not just, just my ideas, but whatever options might be available to see what might be viable. And I'm sorry, to answer the other part of your question, I think was around regional county investment in this. And I've spoken with other counties in our vicinity who are very interested in this idea, but are running into the same problems that we are around how do you pay for it and sustain it going forward. And that's an ongoing challenge. In the governor's budget, there is some money for withdrawal management services to be included in the Medicaid benefit set, but that's, that's anybody's guess as to whether that will go forward or not. That would be a 2025 possibility.
Supervisor Burning?
Yeah, I actually will support this. This has been a huge need in our area, and especially since Bob is very cognizant of the fact that multiple counties are having the same issues, and getting some of them on board. I think I would implore Bob to seek out those counties and find out options on how we could pool resources together to make this happen, specifically for our HHS division and our law enforcement that get wrapped up in these cases, transporting and then having to stay down or finish shifts. It's expensive on their well-being as well, being in a car with someone that's going through an episode for 4 or 5 hours. So I would encourage the supervisors to allow Bob to explore this and bring the options back. I'm in support of it.
Other comments? Supervisor Hanson? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Are you asking for, do we need funds for this? I'm wondering why it comes to the county board.
There's no funds right now involved in this resolution. It's simply a support of going forward and looking at options, my understanding.
I think we're looking at a significant policy decision and something that staff's going to invest a lot of time in investigating and research. And if there wasn't support by the county board, tell us now so we can save all that staff time.
And I just want to say that I am very much in support for having this localized, just not Kitty Roads.
Supervisor Otino?
Thank you. I guess I have a question on the scope because I believe that it sounds like this is a short-term holding facility until you can get the person stabilized in the crisis situation and then send them over to like Stillwater or New Richmond or Hudson Hospital for absolute, where they go into the care and treatment. I think they provide right now up to 150 days, if I'm not mistaken, in that case. Is that what your goal is here?
Yeah, you're correct that this crisis stabilization facility would be a short-term stay. It would be generally a 3 to 5 day length of stay for people. Now, where they go beyond that depends on the person's needs. So it could be a housing need, it could be on community supports that don't require some formal treatment intervention. So we would have to base that, and medical needs too. We have to base all of the individual needs or base our recommendations on the individual needs of the person. Could I say one thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
So DHS did come back to us with a sort of a last-minute offer to help us fund this kind of effort, but they came back to us with a fraction of what we asked for in that original proposal that was referenced for last year. So it wasn't enough money to move forward even if we used Kitty Roads. I don't want to say right now that we're going to dismiss that offer, but at this point it's not enough in and of itself to fund this kind of effort. So it's good that they're coming back to us and asking for our help in making something like this happen, but we need sufficient funding to do it right, and we're not going to our partner is not going to, our provider is not going to take part in this if there's not some stable funding source to ensure that they're going to be in business for more than a year and a half.
Sorry.
I've never been a fan of the county being in the senior care business. We're competing against private businesses. I would explore looking at closing down and moving it over to private businesses and maybe use those funds and the whole facility for just a suggestion for the system. That would be one way to fund it, and then we're not competing against private businesses also for senior care.
Supervisor Van Summeren.
I realize that this is necessary. I just think that as we vote on this, we ought to keep in mind that it's going to be an expensive program, and to support it is great, but we can't just support it and say, yeah, we're all behind you, now take it from here, which is nowhere. We have to be willing and ready to do some funding, do some work on our own. And unless we're willing to do that, somehow work that into the budget, somehow make the money, then we should say, no, today, it's only fair to Bob to do that. Thank you.
Supervisor Counter.
Well, first off, clarification on this. To my understanding, right now, the county already pays for these people that are we pay for the sheriff's department to bring them across the state, and it's not one, but 2 deputies that are off duty in our county that are doing a transportation operation that's as far as 4 hours away, and then their return trip, plus their in-processing time. We have to pay for the facility that they're sent to reimburse them at county expense. So this is not a new expense. This is an expense we're paying already, and we're talking about bringing this into our local area instead of shipping people across the state and paying other facilities on the other end of the state at our expense.
That's correct, and we would be looking for a financial, a funding source that would support this hopefully without any ask of tax levy. It would be, the idea would be to get a stable funding mechanism for this, like Medicaid, to pay a per diem rate. That's what's in the governor's budget, essentially. So our intention here is to find financial support without asking for additional county dollars. And in any case, I would bring proposals forward to you to see if it was something that you wanted to pursue. I wouldn't just do it and then have it show up on our administrator's desk. It would look bad.
Follow up, Supervisor Conroy.
If we can consider something like this in St. Croix County area and have our health administrator go through and look for a method locally, I think we would end up with a cost savings, in particularly if we can get support of our body here and then also incorporate some of the other local counties that would also be able to share and bring, so that we would combine this, and that would overall, I think our overall expenses would go down if we had a shared facility that was being used by others.
Any other final comments? Supervisor Otino.
Yes, I know that we send people to Winnebago and that, but my question, I've never seen it, the facility. How secure is that? Is it a jail-style facility? Is it a medical facility? Is it open? I'm curious to find out. If we're going to replicate that and try to do it here, what are we looking at?
And we wouldn't be replicating that model. I believe Winnebago is a locked facility, is that correct? Yeah. And it's a hospital, so it's a medical facility. But I wouldn't want to, I personally would not want to operate a locked facility in our county. And I've done that. I've run these facilities before. When you lock them, they become a detention center environment, and that's where the fights and the violence happen. If you're taking people that are nonviolent or just ill with mental health problems and addiction problems, you're treating the conditions. Yes, they can leave, but generally they don't. You know, that's our intention. It's to be a healthcare facility for folks with mental health and addiction needs.
Thank you.
Supervisor Burning.
I just had my news feed pop up, so I couldn't unmute myself. I'm sorry. Okay, so we hear the calls and concern for expense very much, and I think Supervisor Counter pointed out very eloquently that we spend a lot of money on this type already. I think to alleviate the concerns of other supervisors who maybe have not delved into this subject matter as much, I would ask Bob to maybe comment on how getting other counties close in proximity to St. Croix County involved in this can help alleviate a lot of the expense that all of our counties are now currently shipping to Winnebago. Plus, maybe talk a little bit about the law enforcement and HHS staff having to travel potentially with that or allocate resources to that to help kind of paint the picture for the supervisors that maybe haven't seen the whole breadth and scope of what we're discussing here and what you're exploring.
Sure. Well, if we opened a facility in St. Croix County, a regional facility, the attraction from other counties, the benefit to them would be that the cost of sending somebody to us if we contracted with neighboring counties would be less than the cost of sending them to Winnebago or some other distant facility. So they would save money in terms of the per diem cost for that individual to go to a regional facility, plus law enforcement would save the cost and time of transporting somebody in handcuffs to a mental health facility a long distance away. The challenge that we have, of course, is in finding a facility to begin with that can serve this population. I've been pushing Kitty Roads because I'm personally not concerned about the safety issue there, and the facility's already designed for this, and it's sitting empty. So it seems like a logical starting point for us to have an advantage to do something like this. The other counties would likely want to use a facility in our county because it saves them the expense and the time of transporting people. If there was an issue, say, and I've talked to Chief Young about this in River Falls, if there's an issue, say, that, just as an example, if the River Falls Police Department brings somebody here and that person leaves and causes some kind of problem in the community, Chief Young's, I don't want to speak for him, but his response to that was local law enforcement generally would be accepting of coming and helping out the local, whether it was a New Richmond Police Department or whomever, and assisting them in responding to calls that might involve another police department. Again, I don't want to speak for the chiefs of police, but the general response from law enforcement is, please do this, please help us, and we can't continue to transport people long distances where they oftentimes come back to the community and don't get well and then require additional medical care, high-cost medical care. So yes, we would save money if we did this correctly, and it would save law enforcement time and money. It's just, how do you begin this, right? And it's like Administrator Witt said, it's a tremendous amount of work. It's very complex, and we want to know if you want us to move forward with this, we will, and we'll tackle the problem as best we can. But if you don't want us to move forward with it, as Administrator Witt said, please tell us now. But I think it's a needed service area.
Supervisor Fiedler.
I would support the resolution. I'm just going to say that I support everything Bob said, but Supervisor Van Summeren suggested something that I'm going to just comment on generally. Addiction, both alcohol and drugs, is a huge, huge, huge problem in St. Croix County. University of Wisconsin just did a study on this. Wisconsin's 50% higher in alcohol consumption, for example, than the rest of the nation. St. Croix County in binge drinking is number 4 out of 72 counties in Wisconsin. We have a crisis in St. Croix County. Bob sees it every day. Alcoholism dwarfs drugs. Drugs are hugely horrible, but alcoholism dwarfs the drug problem. There's tons of people, not just criminals, just ordinary citizens who have huge alcoholism problems, who need help, who basically need it from HHS board. And I'll just point out that both Public Protection and the HHS board are hosting programs on mental health, alcoholism, drug addiction over the next 3 weeks. And you can't believe the cost of just the alcoholism cost to the county. All costs in, according to the University of Wisconsin, $64 million a year. So this is a problem we're going to face much beyond what Bob has described now if we really were to address the problem. And then I'll throw out one last thought. Think of what is happening now in Minnesota. They're about to legalize marijuana. In 6 months, there will be there will be legal marijuana 1 mile away from here. Think of what that's going to do to crime in St. Croix County. It's going to overwhelm St. Croix County with drugs. Believe me, the deputy sheriff is back there. I think nod your head, please, if you agree with me. It's going to overwhelm St. Croix County in years to come. We will not look the same in 5 years as a result of what Minnesota is doing unless we do a whole bunch of things to get a handle on this.
Vice Chair Fiedler, oh, I'm sorry.
Did you have a comment, Supervisor Van Summeren?
Yes, thank you. We talk about how much money we're spending, how much money we're saving. Does anyone have an idea what that figure is? I mean, that would be good for us to know how many dollars we're talking about here. I mean, I agree, it's a great thing. We could probably partner with others, but how much are we actually talking about money?
Yeah, I don't know. So the transport costs, I mean, we can go back and we could probably do an analysis to look at that, and we can look at the rates that are charged for the facilities. I don't have that dollar amount available for you tonight, but it would be calculable.
I think that'd be a good idea. I'm for supporting it, but again, I don't want to support something that's going to bite us.
Bob can confirm for you how much money I've offered him from the tax levy to run this.
I'm doubting that Ken offers much money to anybody.
According to our fiscal manager, though, we spent about $800,000 last year in Winnebago costs alone. That doesn't include law enforcement time and expenses.
That does not include law enforcement time? Okay.
Bob, if I could add a quick comment.
Yes.
Roughly, the cost is $1,800 to $2,000 a trip. And that's not necessarily including all the costs of the sheriff's office as they wait at the hospital and wait for the doctors to clear the person so that they're no longer high, because they won't transport anybody who's high. So the officers have to spend hours and hours and hours. There might be a shift change in the middle. Then they've got a 5-hour drive over, 5-hour drive back. So it's about $1,800 to $2,000 a trip minimum.
We do recover some of that cost back from billing third-party insurance, about $200,000 or a little more than that. So $600,000 comes out of our pocket for Winnebago, roughly.
Okay, any final questions, comments? Supervisor, I'm sorry.
I would support this. I have worked in probation and have had actually I've done transports and stuff like that. There's one big advantage to having it locally that no one's talked about is for the families, because the doctors or the people treating them can pull the family in, talk to them, and that's a huge benefit. We also sometimes had to transport families from St. Paul to St. Peter's because they wanted to talk to the family before. I don't know if that happens here, but we found it useful enough sometimes that we did that sometimes. So I would support having it local if at all possible.
Final comment, question from Supervisor Barkalow.
Would it be an idea to bring this before Western Wisconsin Regional Planning? And then, obviously, this becomes a magnet for everybody on this side of the state, seeing that the other side of the state is overrun at Oshkosh. So obviously, it could potentially become a revenue generator, I would imagine, correct?
Possibly, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, just some ideas.
Yeah. I mean, it was revenue generating in Minnesota when we switched to a Medicaid-based payment system. So it's possible, yes. And I'm really open to any ideas. I just want to know if we're, as a county, we want to move forward in this direction. Yeah.
Let's let Bob start the process of looking at it, and then we'll talk to the new director in regional planning further on in the process.
If I could make just one final comment, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to speak to Supervisor Cook's earlier comments that the demands and the pressures on law enforcement are real, and we support them. But the social problems that lead to much of those law enforcement concerns are also real, and we have to address, from an HHS perspective, the social problems that are concurrently rising with on the safety concerns. So public safety and public health go hand in hand. And that's when we ask for new positions, that's what we're trying to address, is those rising addiction rates, those rising mental health rates, and the crisis involved in children's services. So I'll end with that.
I'd like to suggest a voice vote would be sufficient on this particular motion and resolution. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Thank you. Supervisor Otino, thank you for clarifying that. Okay, we're going to move.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
we had, and I'm sorry, I was looking through my emails, the transport to Winnebago, it's a 10-hour average transport, 3 hours average spent on call prior to transport, 1 hour for report time, 494 miles to and from Winnebago, medical clearance is billed to the person in crisis, $700 average for 2 deputies pay for the transport, $30 for meals on that 10-hour transport, fuel and vehicle maintenance costs as well. So I'm sorry to be late on that, but I just got that email. We had sent that a while back to Shar.
Thank you, Sheriff. Okay. Supervisor Otino.
Quick comment, I just wanted to clarify my vote on that. We can't fund what we have right now going forward. We're struggling, and in order to do this on top of that, that's why I didn't want to say to support it and then all the work to be done and then no money to be had, because I don't see where the money's going to come from. And I would much rather see Hudson Hospital, who runs a very good program for addiction and also of all kinds, whether it's alcohol or drugs, to partner into this with the county rather than the county doing it all on its own. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to business item number 5, a resolution approving intergovernmental agreement between the County of St. Croix and the City of River Falls for jurisdictional transfer of a portion of County Trunk Highway U. Do we have a motion to approve? Supervisor Barkalow, second. Supervisor Otino. Who would like to explain this issue? Robbie?
I'd like to call Robbie up to the podium.
Sure, and I'd also like to acknowledge the city engineer, Todd Nikolewski's here as well, so hopefully between the two of us, we can answer all your questions. This is a common agreement that happens as cities grow. The City of River Falls is looking to expand their industrial park on County Highway U. With that comes the need for public utilities, sewer, water, that type of utility growth. Along with that growth, the need to control the right-of-way in which to permit, which to house those utilities. So this is fairly common. This happens around all our communities. So this would be a jurisdictional transfer to transfer U from Paulson Road to the south limits of the county, which is County Highway M. Just for note, County Highway M in this portion, so west of River Falls, is maintained by Pierce County. So this would essentially take this whole section of U and that southern piece of M, which we don't maintain, off the county's end. So if there's any questions, we'd be glad to answer anything we can.
Any questions? Okay. I guess we're ready to vote on this resolution. A voice vote will suffice. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? I want to make sure I don't miss anybody. Thank you. Thanks, Robbie. Okay, we'll move on to business item number 6, amendment to Chapter 79 of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances, all-terrain and utility terrain vehicle route ordinance. Do we have a motion to approve? Supervisor Barkalow, second. Supervisor Otino. Okay, who would like to explain this one?
Why did you step away?
So as part of our annual process, we review applications submitted by municipalities. So Rush River and the Village of Hammond have submitted an application on County Highway J from 170th into the Village of Hammond limits. The board is, the Highway Department has reviewed this. One omission on the submittal is the Sheriff Department has also reviewed this and approved this as well. So I apologize, that came a little bit after this made it onto the legislative file. So we are moving to approve this. We have no real reserves here. It's a reduced speed limit. The only thing I would add is the village is moving the ATV traffic then through their industrial park onto Davis Street, which is also County Highway T, but it is under their jurisdiction, and then they'll manage it from there. So this is what is before you for approval. It does take full action. We would review this annually as we do all our applications and routes.
Questions? It's getting easier as the night goes on, I noticed. Oh, Supervisor Carlson.
I live right in that area, and they already use it, so might as well. I don't think it'll change anything.
Okay, good to know. Okay, seeing no questions, we're ready to do a voice vote on this. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to number 7, I believe our last business item. Ordinance amending Chapter 18 floodplain zoning, Section 18 official maps of the St. Croix County Code of Ordinances. We have a motion, Supervisor Hanson, second, Supervisor Van Summeren. Okay, Supervisor Hanson, would you like to take this?
Sure. This is an amendment based on the evaluation of 2 dams, Little Falls Dam, which is on the Willow River in the town of Hudson, and the Riverdale Dam, which is on the Apple River in the town of Star Prairie. They have both been determined to be at high hazard, so the dam maps had to be redone to reflect the hydraulic shadow for a 100-year flood. These maps have been added to the flood plan, and that's what you have before you, is a modification of Chapter 18, so that we need to vote to add that in. It's all fascinating. But there are no structures in those floodplains, as far as I know. Is that right?
There are some additional structures, but I don't believe they're houses. They're smaller houses.
Well, you have to come up to the, yeah, I'm sorry. You have to answer that question to the microphone.
Yes,
This is
good
Brett
evening.
Boudreau.
Good evening. There are a few additional structures in there in the dam failure analysis that are not in the previous floodplain. The previous floodplain encompassed most of the area, but this dam shadow was a little bit larger than the floodplain, and there are some smaller structures that are within there. We did send notice to all of the affected properties and received 2 comments at the public hearing, and we addressed both of those.
Dam shadow. We did have a public meeting, and one person who lived in that area did come to the meeting, and we answered the questions satisfactorily. So,
Questions? No, I won't go there. It's not worth it. Okay, I believe a voice vote is also appropriate here. All those in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much. Okay, that concludes our business items for today. We're going to move on, annual reports. It looks like Taylor's up for facilities.
Good evening. You all have the report, and I'll try and answer any questions you have. I just want to say that I can't do my job without my crew, the maintenance techs, the custodians, and housekeepers. along with the project manager and operations coordinator. It takes a diverse group to be able to do what we do. The mechanics, any given day, whether it's HVAC, electrical, plumbing, moving furniture, moving snow, or groundskeeping. And then you got the housekeepers and custodial staff keeping the buildings clean and their attention to detail. And then the project manager, he's got his hands full with this building addition. And Sandy, our operations coordinator, she takes care of the building and our badge access system and our door controls. We've had a busy year the last year. The medical examiner's room, the CT room, finishing the warm storage building. We also did a controls upgrade up at the health center, and then the designing of the government center. And a couple things is I just want to thank the staff at the government center for helping with the design process and the cooperation during the government center expansion. It's been kind of noisy. And I just wanted to thank you all for your support with the facilities department. And do you have any questions?
Any questions for Taylor? Supervisor Hanson.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but so, I know that you're really busy with this government center expansion. Are you able to keep up with the preventative maintenance and all the other buildings, even though or have you had to add any staff with the focus going on here?
We're able to keep up with the preventive maintenance. We still have currently we still have three guys up north in Richmond. One guy stops in Baldwin every day, and then we have 2 to 3 guys here at the government center. So our day-to-day activities, we're still getting that stuff done. We'll see when this project really gets going of how many people I have to pull for when the move happens.
And we've done some projects up there already early in this year. We got a couple roofing projects. You did some security doors at the service center.
We haven't done that yet, but getting to it.
Any other questions? Thank you, Taylor. You got a big job ahead of you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we're on to IT. Our favorite IT guy, John.
Gosh, I hope so. Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to say that 2022 was another great year for the IT department. We worked hard to create efficiencies for the county staff by modernizing some of the critical systems that we use here and maintaining a safe and secure computing environment for them to work in. Security continues to be a top priority for the IT department. As outlined in our annual report, we were able to fill our security analyst position this year. It was open for about 9 months before we were able to fill it with somebody of quality that we wanted working on our team. Filling that position allowed us to complete a variety of security-focused goals that we had set before us. So it was a good fill for us. If you have any questions about anything that's in my annual report, I'd be glad to answer them for you now, or anything about the IT department in general that you have questions about, I'd be happy to answer.
Questions for John?
Well, then I'd just like to say thank you for your continued support.
Thank you, John. Sometimes it's goes well going last. So. Okay, do we have any requests for future agenda items from anyone? Okay, seeing none, any county clerk's correspondence? Okay, announcements. I just wanted to mention briefly, our July meeting happens to fall on July 4th. So if there's a need for a meeting, it would be a special meeting during the month of July, but we'll keep our fingers crossed that we don't have any pending or big issues, and then we'll just be canceling the July meeting altogether. So if you're making holiday plans, you can look forward to that. Any other? Okay, Supervisor Hanson.
You all probably got a email regarding a Thursday, May 11 meeting on tourism, Routes to the Future, St. Croix Valley discussion on called St. Croix Valley Business Innovation at the Innovation Center, which is a tourism event put on by the St. Croix Economic Development Corporation, the Hudson Area Chamber, and St. Croix County, which is about a 3-hour conference, really a brainstorming session, and I'm going to go, and I'd encourage anybody who's interested in tourism in St. Croix County to go. We've got a couple of people from several different agencies that are going to be there, and it would be good to have as many brilliant people there as possible to help look at economic development with regards to tourism in St. Croix County. So it took me a while to put together my thoughts on that, but I'd like to have anybody who's interested in that come. And that's Thursday, May 11, 8:30 a.m. So please join us.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Otherwise, thank you for all the good discussion. I know it was a little bit of a long meeting tonight, but these are really important issues, and I'm glad that we had a lot of really good, positive, solid comments, and we were able to work through these issues and come to a consensus. So thank you very much. It's 7 o'clock. We are adjourned.